So, believe it or not, but taking photos of northern lights is actually pretty simple, no matter if you are an advanced photographer or a complete beginner. That's at least if you follow a few simple settings which I'm going to share with you in this video and which should hopefully help you to achieve some pretty decent results basically with any kind of camera. And so let me show you how I set my professional camera to get photos like these, but also how you can get some still pretty good northern light shots on other devices, such as something like a point-and-shoot or a action camera like a GoPro or similar, or something as simple as your phone. First of all, let's start with the phone, because that's basically the camera that you will always have with you, basically no matter what. It isn't the best tool for the job, but still you can get some pretty decent results. Unfortunately though, if you have an older phone, you cannot really expect any miracles, because, for example, I'm still using iPhone 12. And I don't think that you can actually use anything that's older than this, because it is really hit or miss. Like, you can get some good photos, but it really depends on a lighting situation at all. And if the lighting isn't just perfect, it sort of looks like it was just shot on a potato. And to be completely honest with you, northern lights, that's actually the main reason why I've been lately thinking of upgrading my phone, even though I don't really need a new phone other than for northern lights. But still, if you have like iPhone 14 or newer, or the newer Android phones, it's just so simple, and they do just such a good job. You basically just have to point it at the sky, press a button, and that's it. But there are still a couple of tweaks that you need to do before you start shooting, and so let's just take a look how you do that. And it is actually all pretty simple. All you really have to do is to just go up here and make sure that the flash is disabled, and then click on this icon right here, which will enable the night mode. And so you'll see the time appear up here. The next thing you can do is to either let the phone choose how long of the exposure you need, or you can also click on this arrow up here and you will see this bottom menu pop up. And then you can click this icon here. This will basically allow you to let you control the exposure time. And remember, because we are dealing with long exposures here, you really want to make sure that you are not moving your phone around too much. And so basically after you press the shutter, just don't move it, just try to hold it super still until the photo is taken. Like all the new phones, they are doing an amazing job of keeping everything stabilized, so you can get away with just doing everything handheld. But still, if you have a space for that, just pack a tripod with you and bring that. It will definitely help you to maximize the quality that you can get out of this photo. And if you decide to bring a tripod, what you can also do is to set a timer on the phone. And so after you press that shutter, that will basically ensure that you won't create any extra shakes to the phone. And what you will also find out is that to get the highest quality, it's best to use your primary lens and not your ultra wide or zoom lens. And what I have recently learned, at least with my old iPhone 12, is that I can see the best results if there is at least some light source nearby and if it's not completely dark. And that is completely different that I know from shooting with a professional camera, when basically the darker the better. And so that's just something that I observed, and it just seems that at least a little bit of some light source that you can have in the frame, that will help with all the noise, and it just seems to work a bit better. And here you can actually see some examples of photos that I recently took. And so, as you can tell, it does the job, but the quality really isn't the best. With that said though, I really don't want to mislead you to thinking that iPhone isn't capable of taking good quality northern light photos. You basically just need a newer phone and that's it. And I know that because I have actually had a chance recently to just try to take a couple of photos with, I believe it was iPhone 14, and it did actually a pretty good job. And also the other thing is that I see that all the time on my Instagram feed, people posting amazing photos of northern lights, and I know that all of that was taken basically just using their phone. And so phones are great, definitely, but what if you don't really want to use your phone? Or maybe you just want something that gives you a little bit more control on settings, or maybe you just don't really want to bother with carrying a heavy camera gear around. What can you do then? One option that I can give you is to get one of these action cameras, like a GoPro or any other similar camera from brands like DJI or Insta360. So when we take a GoPro here as an example, which just want to go to photo, and then here you see a night photo right in the settings, and so we can click on that, and here we see there are a couple of options that we can play with and choose. You have the lens, we can keep that on wide, then we have the shutter, so this allows you to change the shutter speed. I would say you can just keep it at 15 seconds, and if needed you can go to 20 or 30. Output, we want to change this to RAW. Then we have a timer. I recommend to have it at like 3 seconds again, so you can avoid all the unnecessary shakes when you press the shutter button. Then if we go down here, we see white balance. We can keep it at 4000, ISO minimum, but mainly we want to set the ISO max. And here we can actually keep it at 800. I wouldn't really go higher than that on GoPro. Sharpness, I like to keep that on low and then adjust it in the post-processing if I need to. Color, the best is I think keep it on natural. And that's basically it. But unlike with the phones, you cannot really shoot Northern Lights just handheld, and you will have to use a tripod for that. Luckily, GoPro makes these super light travel tripods, which they are great for traveling, but they really suck when it comes to like when it's windy and stuff. Basically, you just have to make sure that it is super well stabilized, because you will see any kind of movement on the photo and everything will just get a bit blurry. And speaking of small cameras, another thing which you could use is something like simple point-and-shoot camera. And the good thing about it is that they are not very expensive, especially if you find them used. You can find them for pretty good price. And the good thing is that you are also not compromising on the size. Like, look how small this thing is. And depending on which exact camera you will choose, oftentimes you can even get better results than you would get with your phone or something like a GoPro or any other action camera. I mean, let's just compare it. Like, this is my iPhone 12 and this is the Sony ZV-1, which I just picked up yesterday. And I mean, it is so tiny and so light. Yet it shoots like 20 megapixels photos in RAW, and you have just way more flexibility when it comes to settings and stuff. The one problem though, at least with this particular camera, is that this lens is basically equivalent of like 24-70, which isn't very wide. If you are shooting Northern Lights, what you want to have is something wide, like 12, 14, 16 millimeter lenses. And that will basically allow you to capture, you know, as much of the sky as you basically can. With that said though, in 24mm it has an aperture of 1.8, which is perfect for night photography. And even though 24mm isn't something that I would really recommend, I could still get away with it, like shooting in a portrait mode or something. And so if you wanted to get a point-and-shoot camera for Northern Lights photos, look for something that has a wide angle lens, which there is pretty good range of cameras which has like 16mm lenses. And so yeah, I would recommend to look for that. And when it comes to setting on something like this, it is more or less the same as on the mirrorless camera which I'm shooting on right now, and which is basically the camera which I use for like 95% of my Northern Lights photos. And before we dig into settings, I just want to quickly say that both for point and shoot and also for like professional cameras, mirrorless DSLRs and so on, you will just want to get a tripod. You could get away with just laying the camera on the ground, you know, or on your backpack, but I wouldn't recommend it. Just super flimsy, and just get a tripod, period. Okay, so let's now take a look what we need to adjust before we start shooting with the camera. First important thing is to make sure that it is switched in the manual mode, which will basically allow us to control all the settings. So first of all, let's set the aperture to the lowest number that we can, which in this case would be 2.8. Now when we look at the white balance, let's just keep it at 4000, which is on the more blue, colder side. And what that will do is basically it will ensure that your photos won't come out looking like too yellowish. And that's actually one mistake that a lot of people do when starting out with Northern Lights photography. Alright, now let's cover the exposure time and the ISO. And that is a very important one, because let's say that the northern lights aren't too bright and they sort of just appear like this green stain in the sky. What you could do is to drop your shutter speed to like 15-25 seconds and maybe lower your ISO a little bit. And what that will do is it will basically pull those lights from the sky and it will appear pretty good on the photo. And it will look nothing like in reality, but let's just say that nobody on the internet really needs to know that, right? Like you could, for example, just start at like 15 seconds and maybe 800 ISO and then just adjust those values from there. But then when you get a very strong northern light show, where you can really see the side-to-side movement and when it almost looks like green needles falling from the sky, then the precise settings become way more important. Because the thing is that if you use a very long shutter speed in a scenario like this, what will happen, even though it may look okay sometimes, it will basically just blur everything and you will lose like all this detail of the movement in the sky that you can even see with your naked eye. And so what you will want to do here is basically drop your shutter speed to maybe like 8-10 seconds and then boost your ISO a little bit. And that will basically take care of capturing all this movement in the sky. And of course it will depend on how strong the northern lights are, how bright they are, how much they move, also what is the lighting scenario around you. And so don't expect to nail the shot on the first try. And what you'll want to do is to just take a couple of photos, see what works the best and just go from there. And that brings me to aperture, because if you have a fast lens like with aperture like 1.8 or maybe 2.8, that can also help you with keeping those ISO values on the lower side. And that means that it will help you to also keep the noise down a little bit. With that said though, most of the professional cameras are pretty good with handling the noise in low light situations. And so actually what I'm using like 95% of the time is this 16-35 f4 lens. And so you don't necessarily need like new low aperture lens just for the northern lights photography. If you have one, great, definitely bring it with you. If you don't, f4 still completely fine. When it comes to focal length, I think that the widest lenses like 12, 14, 16 millimeters, these are the best because they really allow you to get as much of the sky in the frame as possible. Sometimes I'm also using the 28-70 that I'm actually filming on right now, and that's for the scenarios when, let's say, the northern lights are sort of like dancing in the distance above some good looking peak or something. But that is really, I don't really use that much, and like I said, like 95% of the time I'm always using my wide angle lens. Another thing that I want to cover is focusing, because that can be sometimes tricky, and what I usually do is basically I just try to focus to some light source in the distance, try to focus on that, and as soon as I get my focus I basically flip the camera or the lens into a manual mode, and that will basically ensure that the camera will stop focusing. And from there you just have to make sure that you won't touch your focus ring, and you are basically all set and ready to shoot. And also I really want to mention that you don't have to overcomplicate it with the gear. Like, don't go out there buying the most expensive camera gear just thinking that that will be a game changer for the photography. Like, I know so many people who have like gear worth of thousands of dollars and the photos look worse than from somebody who just used their iPhone. And so it really just comes down to using the right technique and the repetition and just trying it over and over again and failing and learning. Because I mean, trust me, like, I have been shooting northern lights for years now, and the results that I get now, they are way better than what it was in the beginning. But also you most likely already know that taking the photo isn't everything, and it is only part of the process. And the big part of the magic actually happens in the post-processing. And that's really where you can take a raw photo like this and turn it into something like that. But that is another long topic which we will cover next time. And so for now, if you have any questions, just feel free to ask me in the comments below, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!